Joining us right now from the Sacramento Bee. He is the beat writer for the San Francisco 49er coverage over there. The Sac Bee, chock full of great people such as, let's see, I like Marcos Bertone. He's great. I like Scott LaBarre, the editor. He's good. Obviously, Chris is great. Ryan Lillis, I've seen better. He's okay. There are a lot of good people, a lot of great coverage over there. And Chris also does the Candlestick Chronicles with some radio guy as well. Chris, it's Dave. It's Kyle. It's Jay. Good morning. How are you?
Good. How's it going? I think, does Kyle not know the draft starts at 9 a.m. on Saturday?
Yeah, Kyle.
Did I say Saturday? I meant Friday.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, bright and early Saturday. You got to be there for all the late round picks go.
Can't wait.
Kyle can't. Okay. He can't carve out. I mean, talk about priorities. He can't carve 3 hours out to go watch a superhero movie,
and then a half-hour drive each way to and from that theater. Hey, Chris, are you excited to not have to live blog every single thing about the draft?
Yeah, I am. I don't envy you at all anymore. But yeah, I'm excited to work for a more traditional outlet now, and I'm glad I got to stick you with the live blogging portion of it.
I really, really, really appreciate it a lot. Is Nick Bosa going to be the pick at 2?
If he doesn't go first, yeah, I think he is. All indications are, and John Lynch, hasn't said it explicitly, but I think just given the way the 49ers roster is constructed and the fact that they want to lock DeForest Buckner down to a long-term contract, which could cost $18 to $20 million a year, it just wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to draft Queenan Williams given that they play the same position. So I think if Nick Bosa is there, if he doesn't go off the board first, I think the 49ers would jump at the opportunity because it gives them an opportunity to bookend the defensive line opposite Dee Ford, and obviously the 49ers set an NFL record for the fewest takeaways last year with just 7, including 2 interceptions. So potentially adding Bosa with Ford, who led the NFL in forced fumbles last year, the 49ers could presumably take significant steps defensively because they were not good on third down or in the red zone. So maybe bolstering the pass rush off the edge would be the answer for them.
So the elephant in the room, not that anybody hasn't addressed it, has been Bosa's social media, and we saw that kind of creep up again yesterday. I'm curious how Lynch and the rest of the organization's dealing with this, especially it's far from the same thing, but on the heels of warning signs about Reuben Foster going into the draft, and then obviously how that worked out for the Niners. Is this something that is concerning them, or is this something they're aware of but likely won't make a difference come draft time?
I think it's the latter. I think they're definitely aware of it. I don't sense that they're overly concerned with it. They're going to talk to a lot of, or they already have talked to a lot of Bosa's teammates and coaches at Ohio State. And from everything I gather, Bosa was a very well-liked teammate. I'm not sure exactly how they feel about the social media stuff specifically, but John Lynch came out and said it yesterday that he thinks he's a great teammate. Michael Thomas, the receiver for the Saints, a former Ohio State player, said, has come to Bosa's defense on Twitter and things like that. So, yeah, I sense the 49ers are cognizant of it. They're certainly going to look into a lot of it. But, look, I don't think, I don't think Bosa would be the first player in that locker room to have conservative viewpoints. I think there are a lot of conservative voices in that locker room. But the stuff where, whether it's a racist Instagram post, I for one, I can't tell the veracity of those reports just because all those posts have been deleted. That's not to say that I'm saying that they're not true. I just simply don't know. I wouldn't report, with 100% confidence based on those reports. So I'm sure the 49ers are looking into it, and what's going to be more important for them is going to be, the reviews they get from Bosa's coaches and teammates. And from what I gather, it sounds like they're all pretty positive.
It sounds like the Niners might be interested in trading back. Is that something that they're going to explore even if Bosa is on the board? And if they do trade back, who might they target later on in the first round?
Wow, that's a really great question, Kyle. John Lynch said it yesterday that the Niners would really have to be blown away to move back from number 2, and they're gonna listen to all the calls that they get. I think if Kyler Murray is still on the board, they would probably be more likely to trade back because they could get a package potentially including, multiple first-round picks. In terms of who they're going to target, I mean, your guess is as good as mine, really. I would still say a defensive end, a pass rusher like Brian Burns from Florida State or Montez Sweat. I know there's some concern about a heart issue, and some teams have reportedly taken him off their draft board. I look at cornerbacks. Cornerbacks could make sense. You got Byron Murphy from Washington, DeAndre Baker from Georgia. Their receivers, A.J. Brown. I mean, there are a bunch of different directions they could go. They certainly have a lot of needs. But I think trading down would probably happen if Bosa went first overall and Kyler Murray was on the board and another team wanted to trade into that spot for Murray. And I hope you're doing an awesome celebration because I said nice question.
I was.
That's the first time. Is that the first time someone's caught it?
Yeah, I think so. So Dave did not celebrate.
Yeah, Dave was taking notes, and then I completely missed the whole good question
Just
thing.
Unbelievable.
Then Jay runs in. I'm like, what is Jay in here for? Grabs the crown. I immediately know what's going on. I'm just trying to, you have a pre-existing relationship, a working relationship.
What are you talking about?
With this
I've never
individual.
talked to Tristan. I've never talked to him in my life.
Ever in your life? And I mean, truly, Chris, was it a good question, or was it one of those? Because sometimes we say good question just to buy us a little bit of time. Did you truly feel like Kyle's question was in fact good?
Yeah, it was good in the sense that I don't know who the team would target in a trade down.
Okay.
Bro, we've done a 45.
That's a mystery. That's a good question.
We've done a 45-minute podcast about that question.
I feel like maybe the good question crowd for these situations should be like the good question baseball cap.
Just a light fist pump.
So the answer to this is not a good question. I'll say right off the bat. The answer to this is probably you kind of answered it, but let's just go with everyone assumes Kyler Murray's going number 1 and Bosa's going number 2. But let's say Bosa goes number 1, as you said. Do you think it's a foregone conclusion that they trade back? If not, well, who do they grab at number 2? Let's just assume they keep the pick there.
I think it would be Queen and Williams. I think there's Williams and Bosa, and then there's sort of everybody else. I think they're clearly the top tier of defensive players. And John Lynch said yesterday that even if it was Queen and Williams, despite having all those defensive tackles and DeForest Buckner and Solomon Thomas and Arik Armstead, that there's ways to get everyone the snaps that they need. So I think Bosa is the better fit just when you look at the roster in terms of what the 49ers need at defensive end. But long term, you can make a Quinn and Williams fit because Arik Armstead is a free agent after this upcoming season. Solomon Thomas doesn't look like a player the 49ers are going to keep around for too long, or at least they might not pick up his 5th-year option. He's had 2 pretty uninspiring seasons so far, so he would have to improve pretty significantly to be a part of that long-term picture at defensive tackle. So over the long run, I think you could feasibly make Queen and Williams work, and I think if Bosa were off the board and the team didn't want to trade down, I think he would be a pretty good choice for them.
Talking to Chris Biderman, Sacramento Bee, Niners beat writer. Talked about Queen and Williams real quick. Is there any scenario where you see someone like a Josh Allen as sort of a dark horse sneaking in at that number 2 if Nick Bosa's not there?
I guess it's possible. I think it's more likely they go after Allen if they move back just a couple spots. Say like the Raiders move up to number 2 and the 49ers can get, an extra 2nd or 3rd round pick out of that, or maybe even an extra 1st round selection. Then I think if they're picking at 4 or somewhere in that range, maybe if they trade back to 6 with the Giants, maybe Josh Allen would make a lot of sense there. But I don't know that I just don't think the 49ers are going to like Allen better than Nick Bosa or Queen and Williams.
This is another thing we've talked about before, but the safety class is very deep this year. So is the wide receiver class. So it's happened to be the Niners' probably 2 biggest needs behind edge rusher. Are we going to see the Niners maybe trade up into the back end of the 1st round to target either a wide receiver or safety that's maybe fallen in the draft? Because we've seen them do that 2 out of the last 3 years.
Yeah, that's a decent question, Kyle. They've moved, like you said, they did trade back up into the 1st round for a second 1st round pick in 2016 and 2017. So I think it's definitely a possibility, particularly if there's a safety or wide receiver that they really like. I'm also not closing the door on maybe another position we haven't talked about so much. Maybe offensive line. Joe Staley's entering the last year of his contract. He's going to be 35 this year. We don't know if he's going to play beyond this season. Maybe the 49ers want to find his eventual replacement, and maybe that happens with a second-round type prospect. But everything you read and everything you hear says the meat of this draft is really on day 2 and maybe early in day 3. So the 49ers might not have to trade up into the back end of the first round just because there is a bunch of depth at safety, like you mentioned. Cornerback, too, is another position that seems like it's deep, particularly with tall and long-armed players that the team typically covets for their scheme. And receiver, I mean, there are all sorts of receivers in this class, and I'm kind of expecting the 49ers to come out with multiple receivers, maybe one on day 2 and then maybe another guy they take a shot on in day 3 in the later rounds. But yeah, it's definitely possible, and I think there's appeal to trading back into round 1 because you get the 5th year of control, the 5th year option that you only get for first-round picks, and I think that makes financial sense if it's a good player. But I don't know if the 49ers have to do it just because the positions they need are looking pretty deep in this class.
Oh, and that's kind of where I was going to go with the next question. Beyond everything else, Jimmy Garoppolo is coming back next year, and knock on wood, will be healthy and is going to need targets. George Kittle is obviously first and foremost a big giant target for him to throw to. But it seems like the Niners had their eyes not on day 1, as you said, but beyond that in bolstering. No Odell Beckham here, no Antonio Brown here. They want to get young and good. And I imagine also Dante Pettis is going to be a big part of their future as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they like Pettis for his versatility. They want him to be a little bit more durable. He had a knee issue last year. I'm curious to see how the team views the future of Marquise Goodwin. He signed a 3-year contract extension last offseason, but then this year he was really banged up starting in week 1. He had a quad injury, and a lot of people view Goodwin, and I sort of agree with this, like a high-end sports car, where if everything's running great, he's a really valuable piece of the offense. If he's a little bit nicked up, then instead of maybe being 95% like another player would be, he's down to like 70%, and he really isn't as effective as the 49ers might need. So I'm curious if they're going to maybe look for another speedy wideout too, with the long-term future in mind, thinking beyond Goodwin. Someone like Andy Isabella from UMass is a similar type of speedy, stretch the field X-receiver the 49ers might be looking for. I know we've talked, Kyle and I, on the Candlestick Chronicles podcast, have talked a lot about the Z receiver and replacing Pierre Garçon with more of a physical pass catcher. But I think, if the Niners aren't sold on Goodwin being a durable player that they can rely on weekly next season, then I think they might that speedy receiver might be another position of need for them to complement what they did last year with Pettis. And I think there are going to be some intriguing options, whether that's Isabella or Terry McLaurin from Ohio State. There are a bunch of other guys in this draft, so I think they have that opportunity.
I don't think the Niners are going to go after a quarterback. I doubt they target a running back. I want to ask you about linebackers, though, because they signed Quan Alexander for a bunch of money this offseason, but he's coming off that ACL tear from last October. He may not be ready to start the season. Is a player like Elijah Lee going to be good enough to fill in for maybe the first 2, 3, or 4 games, or do the Niners try and draft somebody maybe late on day 2 or early on day 3 to add some depth there and possibly start a few games?
Yeah, they definitely might. I think they were pretty happy with Elijah Lee when he stepped in for Reuben Foster late last year, and he was a guy they liked before the draft in 2017. They brought him in for a pre-draft visit. He wound up getting drafted late by the Minnesota Vikings, and then the Niners obviously brought him back off their practice squad because they were still fond of him, and everything that we've seen has indicated the 49ers like Elijah Lee a lot. He's a good athlete. He's a good special teams player, and he probably got some valuable reps last year. So I think they're probably content with him competing for that starting job if Quan Alexander does have to miss the early part of the season. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they drafted a linebacker. I would just think it would come on day 3, and is a guy they get in round 4, round 5 really going to display somebody who already has starting reps in the NFL? I'd say it's a long shot, but it's definitely possible.
That is Chris Biderman. Let's get some plugs out of the way. Obviously, you can go to sacbee.com, Just go to sports, go to Niners. Everything's laid out beautifully there. And there's some things you're going to have to get a subscription for. It's like when we talk about The Athletic. You've got you've got the best local writers in the business. And we have a long history, not only with the people I mentioned now, but of course, people like Jason Jones, Sam Amick, so many that have come from the Bee and also that work at the Bee right now that are going to give you that local slant, huh?
Barrows.
Did I miss Matty Barrows? My God, the one we have the relationship with the most. And guys like Ryan Lillis and Scott Labarde, Marcos Bertone, so many over there that work very hard to get you that local angle on all the teams. And again, it's less than a drink at a hotel or at a bar. So that's where you can read Chris. But also, let's go ahead. Kyle, you made me promise. Where can people hear the Candlestick Chronicles with, as Kyle says all the time, with Kyle Madsen and friends?
Yeah, that's what I say.
You can hear them at Candlestick Park.
How do people hear the podcast?
You can find it on iTunes at Candlestick Chronicles. I think we're also on Spotify and Stitcher. We're on the Blue Wire Network, so shout out to Kevin Jones. But we only ask just fantastic questions and try to answer them as best we can. So,
of course, wear your good question crowns all the time.
Just perpetually on.
Chris, we appreciate it. Obviously, we'll talk to you throughout the summer, throughout the year, and keeping us all up to date on the Niners. Also, follow them online as well. Yes, Kyle.
Candlestick Chronicles is what it's called.
See that? All right, let's let Chris go do more professional things. Thanks for your time, and we'll talk to you. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Take care. That is Chris Biderman.
You're listening to The Drive.